What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Plastic Underground. Caleb here. This week we're making something cool from Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Train to the Plastic Underground. Approaching the station. Please stand away from the platform head.
So recently, Netflix has put out their live-action Avatar, and it's been really good. I enjoyed it, but it's made me want to go back and rewatch the cartoon from the beginning, so I've been doing that. And yeah, it's really good. So wanted to make something fun from the show, something easy. And in this week, what I ended up doing is I made Sokka's Boomerang hatchet thing. This was really fun to make. It was a really easy build. This is literally just 2 pieces of 10mm foam and then just sanded down the edges and cut out these 2 holes. We painted it blue, and that was it. It's a really fun build. It's really cool, and it looks great hanging up on your wall, all your other cool swords and hatchets and stuff. So I'm going to show you how I made it, and I'm going to give you the pattern so you guys can make your own boomerang. All right, let's get to it.
All right, so I drew this pattern up and traced it onto some of this cheap paper here. I like using this paper for blueprinting and stuff because it comes in big rolls and it's pretty cheap, and it's a lot stiffer than like computer paper, so it's easier to trace on. So yeah, the first thing I do is I cut this boomerang out of the paper. So this is some new HD foam that I bought from Hobby Lobby. I think it's their brand. And this is the first project I have used this with. So I like it. I think for the price point and being able to pick it up locally for me, I think it is pretty good. It is not anywhere near the quality of like HD foam from SKS Props that I've used. But it gets the job done, and like I said, I can just kind of grab it at the store, so that is always good for like last minute stuff. So the problem with the way foam comes in a roll is that you have to flatten it out, and that can be kind of annoying. So sometimes what I've done is I've put it like on the bench, and I've put like a couple pieces of plywood and weights on it for a couple days, just let it flatten out that way. But for right now, I just used a little bit of heat and then just kind of laid it flat, and that worked pretty good. But I mark it out with my gold Sharpie, and now I am just using my ruler and cutting out the straight lines, and then just freehand cutting out the curves with a sharp blade. I cut out one full side first. I'm going to be doubling this up to make it 20mm thick, just so it really kind of supports itself, and you don't have to put a skeleton in this because it holds up pretty good. But I cut out one side first. If you notice, I did not cut the little wedge out of the blade in the front. I will do that after. But so I flip it over, and again I use my gold Sharpie to trace this onto another scrap of that same foam. And what this will do is this will allow me to be able to see where I need to put glue. And I like doing this instead of cutting both pieces out and gluing them together. This helps me get the edges a lot closer to being symmetrical and a lot less like cleanup work. Sometimes even if you use the same pattern, you cut two pieces out, they are drastically different. And you gotta sand them down pretty good, and it takes a lot of extra time. So just using some contact cement here right out of the can, using a scrap piece of foam to just put a little bit down and then spread it around. And that actually works really good. It puts a really thin layer on, and it dries very, very quick, which is great. And I was able to put like 2 coats on very quickly. So now that that is dry on both sides, we're going to stick this together. I match this corner, and then I match the long seam of the blade. It's not like super critical to get this exactly where your Sharpie line is, but it definitely helps. And I'm also kind of holding the bottom piece of foam flat when I glue this in place. If it has a curve and you glue to the curve, it will glue the curve in. So I try to make sure that that is flat when I glue it together. So now that is glued together, same process here, just trimming off the extra foam on all the corners. And like I said, this allows me to get a pretty good seam all the way around. So now that that is cut out, I mark the wedge, and I just go ahead and slice that little chunk out of the blade. Then I go ahead and I put my pattern back down, and I poked a little hole in the center of where those circles go, and I'm just using my Sharpie to mark the center of those little circles. So now I mark the edges. So I'm using this technique where I hold my finger against the seam, the edge of the foam, at a specific length, and then if you just run your hand along the edge of the foam, it will mark consistently all the way through. And it doesn't have to be like perfect, so that's how I did it. I have this PVC pipe here. It is sharp on one side, so I can kind of use it as like a little hole saw. So I just kind of keep twisting it and putting pressure on it until you get a good chunk out of the middle. You can pop it out and do the other one. That is so much easier than cutting with a razor blade, cutting a circle out. So I have a bunch of PVC pipes and a couple copper pipes, and they're all kind of sanded like that. So I have a pretty good variety of size circles that I can use that technique, and it does save a lot of time. And so now I'm just going through here and cutting out the bevels. So the top and front and a little bit of the bottom, I put a pretty drastic bevel on. The handle gets kind of rounded over. I think for me it doesn't really make sense if where you hold it is sharp. I think it's drawn that way in the cartoon, but I think for me it just made more sense to kind of round over the handle part and have that go into like a gradual sharpened like angle. You want like the corners to all be sharp and the bottom curve to be sharp, kind of like a knife, and then the handle is just rounded over. So that is how I did it. I'm using the Dremel here, and I'm just sanding everything smooth down to my Sharpie line and the middle seam line so that everything is uniform on both sides. So I use my X-Acto knife to cut those angles in place at first just because it gets rid of a lot of foam and it makes it so you don't have to sand as much. So now you can just kind of go through with this cleanup with your Dremel, and it's a lot less sanding and a lot less dust and a lot less harmful stuff to breathe in. So I always wear my mask too when I am sanding foam. It's really toxic. It's really not good for your lungs. So I always use my like N95 mask or like a dust mask, and just make sure all that stuff does not go into your body. After it's sanded, I use my heat gun. Just go around and heat form everything. Make this closes up the cells of the foam. Gets everything smooth and ready for paint. So I do this on the whole Boomerang. Then I use this really fine sanding sponge, and all I'm really doing here is I'm just trying to get the edges a little bit smoother. Get a little bit of texture from sanding with the sanding drum, but using this fine sponge just kind of knocks the furriness of it and just makes it a little smoother. But then I go back over with the heat gun and really kind of melt that into place. So yeah, the next step here is I put 4 coats of Plasti Dip on this, like always with all my, well, majority of my foam stuff. I always seal it with Plasti Dip. Sometimes I use Mod Podge, sometimes I use, yeah, I think that's about it. But yeah, so coated it with a couple layers of Plasti Dip, and now I'm just using some of this blue. This is the same blue, if you've noticed. This is the same blue I used on one of my Star Trek props. I think this is the blue I used on the desk communicator. The desk communicator speaker. So yeah, it's a pretty nice blue. It has that vibe, and I think it matched pretty well. I was happy I had this on hand. I love it when you can use a can of paint that you already have, that maybe you've bought for one project, and now here's another project you get to use it for. So you don't just have a can of paint sitting around. But yeah, so just kind of, now I'm just going through with a brush with some silver. I think this is actually called chrome. I think this is Vallejo's chrome. It's a nice rich silver paint that is an acrylic, so it paints on very well. And I'm just going through here, and I'm just painting the edge first to make sure I have a nice clean edge, and then I go through and I paint the entire bezel. I do that on both sides of the Boomerang, and then I even paint the inside of those circles. I want it to look like just the surface of the metal is painted, but the inside of the metal is still silver. So that's why I did that. And that is how it came out. That is the Boomerang from Avatar: The Last Airbender. I hope you guys like it. I hope you make your own, and I hope you share this with your friends and your Avatar friends specifically, and not the blue avatars from Pandora. This is a better Avatar. This is Avatar: The Last Airbender. So share it with your Avatar Last Airbender friends, and I'll see you guys next week.